Hey everyone, my name's Katana Ken, and today I thought I'd give you guys some tips on how to build an awesome Minecraft base. I decided to make this because building is something that can be pretty intimidating, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with it. But being able to create builds that you're happy with makes Minecraft so much more fun. This is my hardcore base, and it took a lot of learning to be able to create this. But hopefully with these tips, you'll be able to build something just as great. First, I'll give some general base tips, and then we'll look more closely at creating an individual build. But first, my biggest tip, just keep building. Just because you're not good at building now doesn't mean you'll never be. You just need to think of each build as a lesson. Think about what worked well and what didn't. As long as you learn something, every single build has value, even if it turns out ugly. And now for our first base building tip. Develop around a central viewpoint. This will help guide where you put new things as you add to the base. You can think about what spots are visually interesting and which ones aren't. Plus, it's a lot easier to create something beautiful when you have control over where it's being seen from. And a great place for your central viewing point is your nether portal, because that's usually the first place people will see your base from. My next tip is to do separate builds for different functions, as opposed to trying to cram everything into one building. It's a lot easier to create multiple small builds instead of just one big mega base. For example, here at my base, I have a library for my enchanting table and my XP farm, and I have a barn for keeping animals and storing hay and stuff. And again, you can go back to your viewpoint to figure out where these builds should go. Also try to think about how you can modify the surrounding environment to highlight builds, because you can see my library is all made out of wood, and originally the hill behind it was dirt. So the browns all just kind of mixed together. But then I went through and replaced this area around the library with stone, and now it pops a lot more. It doesn't get lost. My next tip is to add paths between everything at your base. They make the build just feel way more real because there's actual ways to go between things. One thing I always try to do with my paths is plan them based on actual paths of travel. For example, when I was designing the paths coming away from my house, I was thinking, if I'm going to the wheat field, am I really going to go along the path like this and then do a 90-degree turn and then go this way? Instead, I thought I'd probably just try to run directly for it. So there's this diagonal here instead of it just being the even 90 degrees out of the center. My next base building tip is to make sure you put down lots of grass and foliage. If you don't know, you can just right click on a grass block with bone meal or a moss block and it'll grow grass and flowers. I feel like this also adds to the believability of the build because you probably wouldn't be able to have perfectly trimmed grass everywhere around your base. Plus it also just adds texture and color and makes it more visually interesting. That wraps it up for my base planning tips, and now let's look at some tips for creating an individual build. Tip number 1, look at real life references. Doing this can help you figure out what defines particular buildings or styles, and this church is a great example. When I was building it, I knew that it would have like a tower, but I really wasn't sure what else would make it look like a church. So I looked at a real picture and saw that they had these kind of sloped roofs, they had like these big windows, and I think that really helped me develop it into something that's recognizable as a church. And then this museum I built is another great example. I knew I wanted something kind of fancy looking, so I looked up the Museum of Natural History in New York and used that as inspiration, because I realized that it has like, these big pillars, it has this kind of triangular roof. I think looking at the references made these builds look a lot better than they would have otherwise. My next tip is to outline builds with moss first, because moss is a block that's very easy to break. It breaks instantly with a hoe, so you can clear it out really quick. So outlining the structure with it first can let you get a good idea of the size and shape and quickly be able to dismantle it and build the real thing. And it can help you figure out building placement, because for example, when I built my library, I outlined it with moss, and initially it was 2 floors, and I thought it didn't look interesting enough against the background, so I upgraded it to 3, and then I broke down the moss and built the actual library. But when you're planning your build, I highly recommend you don't make it any bigger than necessary, because I can't count the number of times when I was younger that I'd build a base or something that was just massive and I had no way to fill the space and it was just ugly. Making a build only as big as it needs to be is usually easier and oftentimes looks better too. And also think about the overall shape of the build, because just a plain square is boring, which is what I thought with this library, so I added a little entrance which I think spiced it up nicely. You can also see my house isn't just a rectangle, it's multiple shapes combined together, so we have kind of 2 rectangles that are merged. But one method I find really helpful for planning a build is called the 5x5 building method, where basically you make every build a combination of 5x5 squares. So if I was starting to build here, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now I have a 5x5x5 block. But if I was thinking this is too small for my build, then I just add another one. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for this section. So it would look something like this. Generally, doing this method will help keep your builds in proportion, and I think it takes a lot of the mental load off of planning. Because instead of thinking so in depth about the shape, you're just thinking about how you can combine these shapes to create what you want. And I usually do this layer as the actual floor. So this would be the floor of the build, and there'd be like a stair or something to get in. So once the outline is figured out, I'll pick out my blocks, and I usually just stick with 2 blocks for the main building and 2 blocks for the roof. You can also think about using different variants of blocks. Like if you choose deep slate for your build, you can also do deep slate tile, deep slate brick, polished deep slate. So there's a lot of ways you can vary up the blocks without fully changing it out. After I get the blocks figured out, I usually just build the main structure without worrying about windows or any real detailing, just getting the main walls put up, and then I'll work on the roof. I struggled with the roofs for quite a long time, but I think I finally figured it out. So the general philosophy you want is like this villager house over here. We have one side that's like an upside down V shape, and then one side that's flat connecting to the other side that's an upside down V shape. And you usually want to do stairs all in a row like this with upside down stairs beneath them. And then that's kind of it. Like if you look at my house, it's just that extended to a larger scale. I have the upside down V shape, I have a flat part, and then on the other side, an upside down V shape. And then it's the same thing with this segment, and they're just kind of merged in the middle. So that's kind of the idea behind roofs, is you do this for a bunch of the sides and then merge them all together. And you can also use things like slabs to vary the slope, because with my house here, you can see I started out with slabs and then started doing stairs near the top. So it's gradual and then comes to a point. And then if we go back and look at that villager house again, this one is just stairs. So it's just a very straight slope. So after getting the shell and the roof done, I would work on the windows. I usually just start by doing windows on pretty much every wall, and I put them all at the same size. So like with this house, I started out with just these 2 tall windows, and then I took a look at it and thought that it would look more interesting if the window sizes varied. So I did some big windows up top and left the smaller windows down below. Next, I would do some detailing. So I would be adding things like trapdoors, shelves, bushes, just to make the exterior look a little better. One other build we can look at for detailing is my watchtower here in this village. So you see I added trapdoors that are meant to look like braces that are holding up the tower and supporting it. And I also added these fences as lantern holders. And with my house over here, I also did these little stands in front of the door. And then finally, it's time to work on the interior. First, I just put in everything I think I'd want. So like for this room, I knew I wanted a fireplace, so I added in that and then a lounge. Then I was thinking, what am I going to do with this side of the room? I figured it'd make sense to have a dining table, and then there'd be a kitchen over here. One thing I love putting in my build is rugs, because they can break up the floor so it's not all just stone, but it can also divide up the room into different functions. Like we have this area, that's the kitchen, and then this section, that's the potion brewing area. Plants are another good thing for interiors. Can add a nice splash of color. Like I have this little one and some trees planted right there. I also have like flower pots in different rooms. I also like to put in lots of paintings, because any walls that look too boring can just get a painting slapped onto them, and they look pretty nice. And then the last step of every build is to iterate. Take a look, and if there's something I don't like, change it, and then look again, and if I still don't like it, change it again. And then I just keep doing that till I'm satisfied. Doing this will help you figure out what you actually like and don't like, because you'll experiment with something and think, oh, that doesn't look good, I don't want to try that again. Or you'll experiment with something and think, wow, I want to do that on every build. Now that I've shared some wisdom, let me show it in action by doing a quick little build. I just made this new super flat world, so let's just build a house real quick. I'll start by outlining in moss. I think this will probably work. Give us room for a bedroom and a kitchen and some storage. I started out with just the 5x5, and obviously that's too small for a house, so I thought I'd extend it out to 4 of these squares, but then it would have just been a normal square, so I added one more section at the front for an entrance or a walkway or something. Next, I need to pick what blocks I want to use. I don't really use dark oak that often, so let's build with that. What matches well with dark oak? Maybe birch? So let's start with this and see how we like it. So I'll do the strip dark oak logs for the supports. And what do we want to do for the walls? Just try putting in birch there, see how that looks. If we did a plank outline. Oh yeah, I don't hate that. Now we got to do the roof. We got the basic shape figured out, although I'm not quite sure how much I like the birch on top. Let me try swapping that with deep slate and see how I feel. Yeah, already that's looking way better. I'm swapping it out. There we go. I thought it would be a problem if the 2 sides had different heights for the roof, but it looks fine once they're put together. Next, I'll figure out where I want my windows. Kind of like that. Where should the front door be? Maybe right here. Now let's add in some glass, add in a door. Let's do a couple big windows on this side. Next, we do a little detailing. Just start messing around. All right, I think I'm finally satisfied with the exterior. So I just added some trapdoors to kind of highlight the main door, and I added some buttons as well. And of course, I put down some torches, and I added lots of vegetation, including a row of hedges around the house. Now it's time to move to the interior. So being a house, of course, the first thing we'll put in is the bed right there. We're gonna want some crafting stations, a little bit of storage as well. Put those right here next to the bed. What else? Probably some sort of like living space or lounge area. A little table for eating at. And then of course we have the entryway. Probably just put some barrels there for extra storage. And then we can fill out the space a bit. Let's add some bookshelves, add a little coffee table. Let me add some rugs. I'll do one right there, do another one at the entryway, maybe right here as well in like the cooking area. Right here is looking pretty empty, so I'm thinking I'll add like a little counter of trapdoors, and then I'll put a plant on it. And we could put in a decorated pot as well. How about right there, next to my bed? It's looking pretty good now. Next, I'll add some paintings. My favorite painting. And there we go. That's the build complete. I got the interior full of paintings. It's looking lively. I got these nice big windows to look out by my bed. Pretty happy with this. I think the only thing I might want to change is the wood type. I'm not so sure about this birch wood. It feels a little bright. I'm going to try oak wood. See how that looks. I think I like oak the best. Though maybe I still want to go with spruce. I don't know. Yeah, I think I do like spruce better with the dark oak. And then let's change this door out from a spruce door. I like that more. And now the build is complete. I think something I was able to learn from this build is with roof shapes. I wasn't sure if it would be fine if the roofs were at different heights, but it ended up working out. And I think I also have a better idea of color palettes now, like knowing that dark oak and birch can work together in certain contexts, but I didn't like it in this one, and now I know that. I decided to make this video just because I found that my love of Minecraft kind of exploded once I became a builder, because I realized how much more there was to the game and how much fun it could be to build. Hopefully the same can happen for you. Thanks for watching, guys.